Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of ESPN FC Live with myself, Alexis Nunes, alongside two of the happiest people on this planet, Craig Burley and Mark Ogden. Plenty to talk about before we get into the actual ESPN FC show later on with the boys back in Bristol, Connecticut. But first, let's talk about what went on not too far from London last night in a 7-goal thriller between Luton and Arsenal. Probably not many of us predicted that scoreline, but Arsenal leaving it late to get the winner, breaking the hearts of Luton fans everywhere they're at home. If you have a look at, Arsenal's recent track record, guys, we do see that Arsenal tend to make things a habit of getting some late winners. I'll just read some of them off for you right now. They got a 89th winner against Brentford, 97th minute winner against Luton, 86th minute versus City, and 96th minute winner versus Manchester United. The question is this a sign of champions that they finally just keep fighting till the end and eventually get the job done, Craig?
Well, I don't think there's any, certainly in my mind, there's no doubt that they are the big challengers to City, who I think will probably put a run together as they always do, and then it'll be up to the others to see if they can keep up with them. So, I think they're in a very good position. I think there is a couple of large elephants in the room with team selection and Mikel Arteta dabbling in what he's going to do. But I think in terms of, the squad they have available compared to last year, even though they've got a couple of injuries and Timber's out for the year, it was a big addition to the squad. They're certainly stronger. So yeah, is it a sign of a good side that you're losing 3 goals away at Luton? Well, not particularly, but they dug in there, and Liverpool are obviously in the mix. I know our colleague Stevie Nick thinks Liverpool are stronger than Arsenal. I disagree with that. I think Arsenal are a package are a little bit stronger, but at times they are making it, and maybe the manager is making it a little bit more difficult than it should be for them.
Augie, what do you think? Sign of champions?
Oh, definitely sign of champions. Yeah, if you're scoring late goals to win games, it's basic mathematics. It's only 1 point into 3, isn't it? So that makes a massive difference. And if you can do it on a sustained basis, then it injects the mentality into the players, but also the fans as well, that belief that you can keep going for 97, 98 minutes and win games. And I think it gets into the opponent's heads as well. So when you're playing Arsenal, you know that if you've got a lead or if you're drawing, you know that Arsenal are going to go for it in the last, few seconds of stoppage time. So it's definitely a sign of champions, and it is what sets them apart. It's what, title races have been generally won by close margins over the years. And it's these games, these wins that make all the difference. So definitely a sign of champions, but I do agree with Craig. There are a couple of issues that Arteta has to resolve, and I know we're going to talk about the goalkeeper, but that is the one that could make or break Arsenal's title challenge, really.
Yeah, they could. And I think before we get into the goalkeeping discussion, Craig, I definitely wanted to pick your brain on Kai Havertz, because he definitely has come under a lot of flack, but he has been coming good recently. Are you finally impressed with him, or at least last night?
No, I think you can't argue if you're stepping up with a couple of important goals, but I still think there's a huge question mark about his overall performance and his contribution as the game as a whole. And I think if you said to, as well as this has been a little bit of an uplifting period for Havertz, and boy, has he been under the scrutiny, not just for Arsenal, but for his country as well, where Julian Nagelsmann has sort of been biffing him around and playing him out of position. And that, and playing him in crazy positions like left back, left wing back, and performances that haven't been very good for Germany. And so he's probably getting at both barrels back in Germany as well. And so his confidence is at a low. So the couple of goals that he scored in the league have been important. But I think if he said to Mikel Arteta, look, playing Man City tomorrow or Liverpool, would Kai Havertz be in the team, all things being equal? The answer is probably no. But, if he can come in and contribute when there's injuries or he needs to rest somebody, and then so be it. So that's a positive. I'm a big believer that Kai Havertz has certainly improved the squad, but not necessarily the first 11. And if you want to pay 70 million to do that, then fair enough. Nobody will bat an eyelid if they win the league, but if they don't, there's going to be a lot of questions. But look, it's been a better period for Kai Havertz, but the performances, I think, as a general rule of thumb, I think there's still a lot of questions there about his overall 90 minutes.
All right. Well, Arsenal showing some signs of being potential or eventual champions with this fight that they've been putting up. But Craig kind of alluded to it in the sense that probably still not the best of nights when you're letting in 3 goals as well. And that kind of alludes to the next topic of discussion, which once again has to do with the goalkeeping. I suppose you're going to call it dilemma maybe going on with Mikel Arteta. Well, the goalkeeper in question right now, David Raya, we got to speak to him earlier this year while he was still at Brentford before his move to Arsenal. And he so much so went as to say that goalkeeping is the hardest position in football. Have a listen.
What's the hardest part of being a goalkeeper?
Just, I think, obviously the mental aspect of the game. When you, obviously what you said about making a mistake or whatever, all the bad things goes straight to you and to your head, and you have to be very, very strong-minded to not let that affect you.
Is being a goalkeeper the hardest job in football?
I think so. I think it's the hardest position. Basically, you're alone. You feel alone in the game. So at some point, you are the pinpoint of if you make a mistake, you're focused on the goalie, and the demands are even higher. So you got to be good at everything to be a goalkeeper, and I think you have to. For me, is the hardest position on the pitch.
All right, the hardest position on the pitch. Augie, let me come to you for this one because, look, it's nothing new that whether we go with Ramsdale or with Raya, Mikel Arteta. It's interesting to see how he tackles it, though, especially in his post-match press conference following that game yesterday. 2 mistakes for Raya, and Arteta just kind of refused to answer or field any questions surrounding whether he should bring in Aaron Ramsdale because of these Raya mistakes. What do you make of it all?
Well, Arteta probably decided not to speak about it because he's made more mistakes talking about it than Ray has made on the pitch. Because right from the outset, he said that, I'm making this change because I've got 2 goalkeepers and I might actually make substitutions in a game. I want to be the guy that, changes keepers during the game. And Ray is not my number 1. Well, he clearly is. Arteta's been too clever, really. But he's trying to kid us on that he's smarter than he actually is. And it's just a simple situation where he's decided that one keeper is better than the other, but he won't tell us that. He won't admit it. He won't say that David Ray is my number 1. Now, every manager's got the right to make a decision on his goalkeeper or any position on the pitch. But the situation with Ramsdale is he didn't really make a mistake that warranted him being dropped. And last season, when Arsenal, pushed for the league quite hard until the final month of the season, he was one of the best. He was one of the reasons why they actually challenged for the title. So Ramsdale hadn't made a catalogue of mistakes. It's not like it was David De Gea at Man United last year where he needed to be replaced. Ramsdale was a good part of the way that Arsenal kind of improved under Arteta. Now, obviously, he wants to change the way they play. But he's now, Arteta, by saying what he's done and by acting as he has done, he's put doubt into Raya's mind. He's put doubt into the defender's mind. And he's kind of messed with the head of Aaron Ramsdale as well because, Ramsdale's thinking, what have I done wrong? I've had a good season, but I'm not playing now. So Arteta's created this situation on his own. And if Raya's making a mistake, it may be because he's overthinking what the reaction is going to be from his manager. So that's why it's the hardest position in football for David Raya, because he's got to deal with what's on the pitch and also what his manager says off it.
Craig, what do you think Arteta should do at this point right now? Because as Augie said, he's kind of dug himself a little bit of a hole here right now.
Yeah, I know Augie and Shaka talked about it last night on the FC show, and I think it's now a really difficult scenario, and Augie's right. It's all down to how the manager has handled this. There was no desperation to change the goalkeeping position, but Arteta seemed hell-bent on doing it, and now he has 2 goalkeepers, one who is under severe scrutiny for his performances, David Raya, who is the number 1, and the other goalkeeper who's been given a punch in the gut, and Aaron Ramsdale, who when he did come in against Brentford was so desperate to make a point that was taking all sorts of risks and chances and almost trying to prove that he should be back in the team, when really, the only way he's going to get back in the team is if these mistakes continue for David Raya. And if these mistakes continue for David Raya, it's unlikely that Declan Rice or Jesus or Martin Odegaard is going to score last-minute winners every game to the end of the season. So it's a huge conundrum. Look, I don't see him draw. I almost see him like that. You know, he's like, I don't want to talk about it. Don't tell me David Raya's not playing well, because he was supposed to be great with his feet, but he's looked nervy in a lot of the games with his feet. He's supposed to be statistically a better shot stopper, but he looks patchy at that as well. And he has absolutely no command of his penalty area. He's got no physical presence, and that starts to put doubts and pressure on defenders. When you've got a keeper who comes out and basically flaps, he got away with it in the Man City game. He's got away with it in a couple of other games. He did not get away with it in this Brentford game, and he's not the tallest. And so when you have all these facets that are making yourself nervous and everybody else nervous, it's a problem. But I just don't see Arteta dropping him for a big game soon, because that would almost be admitting that he's got it wrong. But it's a problem. It is a problem. And when he has to go back to Ramsdale, if that is the case, you know, what kind of keepers are he going to get in Aaron Ramsdale coming in? One that's less confident than he was 7 or 8 months ago. So I'm not saying David Raya is a bad goalkeeper, but when I look at him, he doesn't fill the goal, doesn't command his area, doesn't instill me looking at it as a neutral full of confidence. And if I'm saying that, I'm telling you now, this Arsenal back four in particular, they're seeing that as well.
All right, well, I suppose it's enough about Arsenal and Luton now, because we're in for another juicy night in the Premier League. And I'm talking about the fixture coming up tonight. Augie is actually getting ready probably to head to Old Trafford for that one. Manchester United up against Chelsea, Craig's former club. Two clubs that are in similar situations, although we could argue that they are in varying degrees of it. But both of you, I just want to pick your brain on what you think is the single biggest issue facing both Manchester United and Chelsea going into this one. Augie, let's start with you.
Well,
At least go head to head right now. Could it be Eric Ten Hag? A lot of questions around him this week, banning journalists and whatnot.
Yeah, well, the biggest issue, I'll do the easy one first, Chelsea. The biggest issue there is that they've got a massive squad, and Pochettino's just trying to mould it all together and put it. And I think he's beginning to do that. I think Chelsea are beginning to look like they're on the way to being a decent team. Maybe not this season, but I think you can see signs of progress, and he's settling on players now. Man United, the biggest single problem, I mean, it's probably the owners. I mean, I know the owners don't directly affect what happens on the pitch, but they affect the mood of the club and the decisions that are taken and the general sense. And I think the reason why a lot of the players have, for want of a better word, stopped trying or, look like they're not trying is because they feel that there's nobody at the club that's in charge. So there's no kind of comeback on them if they don't perform. They look at Eric Ten Hag and think, well, you might be in charge, but you might not be in charge for much longer because there's going to be somebody else coming in taking charge of football operations. And there's nobody there that has the sense of, right, are the boss. Ten Hag's the boss of the team, but he's not the boss of the club. So the players can sense that weakness and they're taking advantage of it. And that weakness has come from the owners because the owners have kind of taken a back seat or not really put the commitment or the drive into it that the owners at Man City or Liverpool have. So I think that they're the biggest problem because it does infect everything at the club. And I think you've seen a lot of players, and we can name them, can't we? Marcus Rashford, Anthony Martial was so bad at Newcastle at the weekend, and their performance was one that showed you or suggested that they don't believe in the manager and they feel they can get away with that sort of performance because the manager's not totally in control of his own situation. Don't really like harping back to Sir Alex Ferguson's days. It's a bygone era now. It's 10 years ago, but players would never got away with that because he was in control. He was totally in control. So if they upset Ferguson, that was it. That was the end of the line. If they upset Ten Hag, well, stick around for a couple of months. He might not be there. So that's why they get away with it. It's all down to the owners.
Back in the good old days, the Chelsea used to go there and win,
Yeah.
But
the good old days may return tonight.
Well, I'm going back a while. It was 1996 when Vialli scored. But it was interesting. I don't think Chelsea's recent record there. I think you guys were touching on it, Augie, yesterday. The recent record there isn't great, but I think twofold. For me, I mean, Mark knows way more about the behind the scenes stuff than me being up there. But looking at the game tonight, looking at the storylines for me, Chelsea, it's discipline. Been poor with discipline recently. Reece James, Cucurella gobbing off, Conor Gallagher sent off again. That was the second sending off. Caicedo should have been sent off in that game against Brighton. Was very lucky to do so. And of course, Pochettino just returning to the touchline from a suspension for 3 bookings, which he spent in the stand at the Newcastle game. So I think, amongst other stuff, they've played a little better, but not convincing. But this just for me today, before we even get to kick off, is saying Marcus Rashford. That's bearing in mind he is and has been the poster boy, the local boy, the big talking point amongst everything else, amongst leaks, amongst banning journalists. Marcus Rashford, with the new contract after all the goals last season, everybody wants to see that team sheet tonight and to see what way Eric Ten Hag is going to go. Because we can talk about Anthony Martial to an extent. John Champion, I think, had a good line at the weekend. Anthony Martial hasn't completed 90 minutes in a United shirt in 3 years. Tells you all you need to know about him. But Marcus Rashford was the guy bailing them out last year, banging the goals in, carrying the can, taking the team on his shoulders, gets the new contract. And quite frankly, he's been nothing short of a disgrace. I can take 2 goals in 18. I can take bad performances. We've all had bad performances. Oh my God, we can all play badly. But you cannot accept, as a manager, as a fan, as a teammate, the lack of effort, desire to put in and work your socks off, to try and work your way through the hard time that the team is having, that you're having, that your manager is having. The only way to get through it is to work and grind your way through it. Not stand there twiddling your thumbs on the sideline, doing nothing, feeling sorry for yourself. And it's going to be really interesting to see if he is going to be selected for this game, because that's going to tell a big story. Because either Ten Hag's had some super duper discussion with this player and is convinced it's all going to spin in 3 or 4 days, or he's basically buckling and saying, "Mark, I haven't got anybody else." So for me, before we even get to the game, the team selection for Man United is the most intriguing thing for me.
Mark,
last week I saw
we actually touched on, I would say loosely, I suppose, off the record yesterday when we were talking about, because you recently wrote about how you said Marcus Rashford has become probably one of Manchester United's biggest problems right now. Words that I think 2 years ago we probably didn't think we'd ever say, considering he has been the poster boy for this club that we know is his childhood club. He loves them so much. But what would you be doing if you're Eric Ten Hag, especially now when we are kind of looking extra closely at his man management, and how close are we seeing maybe a squad without Marcus Rashford at Manchester United?
Well, if I was Ten Hag, I'd drop it on the basis that his performances haven't justified him being picked. Now, if Ten Hag doesn't drop him, it sends a message to the rest of the team that, well, this guy's undroppable. You know, Rafael Varane's been dropped. Probably rightly because of form. Harry Maguire was dropped last season. You know, lots of players have been dropped by Eric Ten Hag. He dropped Cristiano Ronaldo last season. But if he doesn't drop Marcus Rashford, then that says, well, this guy's got a free pass to just play as badly as he has been doing, because, you know, they have got options. I mean, last week against Galatasaray, although they didn't win the game and they drew 3-3, they played quite well attacking-wise without Rashford. You know, so there are opportunities. I mean, Anthony's not great, but he came in and put a bit of work in. So he does have options. I just think the message it sends out if Rashford plays tonight is such a negative one. And Ten Hag will spin it by saying that, you know, he'll score goals eventually. He'll come back to form. We're helping him. But he's lost the right, really. He's got 2 goals in 18 games. And one was the penalty that was kind of given to him on a plate by Bruno Fernandes against Everton. So there's absolutely nothing in Marcus Rashford's game right now, his performances, in his demeanour, in anything that he does that justifies him being picked. So Craig's right. You know, the team sheet, I remember being at the Man United Real Madrid game a few years ago, and everyone's jaws dropped when Wayne Rooney was dropped by Sir Alex Ferguson. But it is one of those nights, really. It's like this is a crossroads for Ten Hag. You know, he either, you know, he's bold and drops him, or he caves in and picks him. And then if he picks him, though, I think that Rashford could be kind of subject to a bit of stick from the crowd tonight. So I think a lot of United fans have lost patience with him now, and I think they feel that he's living out their dream by playing for Man United, and he's not showing any kind of sense of joy or any, you know, anything that, you know, that most Man United fans give the right arm to play for Man United, but Rashford looks like it's an ordeal. So I think he needs to kind of raise his game for the fans, but he might have to do it from the bench tonight rather than from the starting team.
I think, okay, that does that not tell you where we are? That you're actually thinking Anthony, who I think just a fancy Dan, but would be a viable alternative or a better alternative to Marcus Rashford at the moment. You know, that's a sad indictment of let's be honest, one of England's most talented players. He's 26 years old now. He's not a young guy, but he's a talent. But do you know what? I don't think the fans would be on his back as much if they actually saw him chasing and closing down and tracking back. I think fans will accept mistakes to a certain extent as long as they can see work rate. But when you're not performing and you're not working, I mean, that's just not going to sit well.
It looks like he doesn't want to be there. It looks like he doesn't want to be there. And that's the main issue. You know, he signed a big 5-year contract. And he looks like he doesn't want to be there. And the reality is, if he didn't want to be there, well, why did he sign the contract? Because we've not had the opportunity to ask Marcus Rashford this. But when he signed that contract in the summer, I just said to him, well, what have you seen in Man United that you're 26 now? What have you seen in the club that makes you believe that for the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to realise your ambitions at this club? Because there's no sign of it. You know, if he's that good and people close to him suggest he really is, well, maybe he isn't. There wasn't massive interest in him in the summer. There was no sense of Barcelona or Real Madrid or PSG coming to sign him. There really wasn't. So United caved in by making the best paid player at the club on the back of, 3 months of good form. When the reality, if you take that 3 months over the last 2.5 years, that was a blip. This is the reality of Marcus Rashford now. The blip was him scoring a lot of goals because he had the worst season he's ever had the season before last, and now he's going back to it again. So United have caved in again and given somebody a new contract when they hadn't really deserved it.
All right, well, quick question now before we get into the actual nitty-gritty of this game and preview it. But one-word answers. Which manager do you expect to turn things around first, guys? Or which club do you expect to probably win a Premier League title first? Craig, start with you.
None of them. I think in all reality, I don't know what way Ineos are going to take their investment into United. Chelsea have been a circus with a scattergun approach, but I'm going to say, I'll say Chelsea, but by a very thin margin.
Augie?
Yeah, well, it's not much of a race. It really is kind of, two teams that are probably going to get the wooden spoon ordinarily. I'm going to stick my neck out and say Man United because I just think Chelsea is such a mess. Although Pochettino's getting it right, I don't think Chelsea are set up to win things like they used to be under Abramovich and Mourinho. I just think I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the Jim Ratcliffe group that they will come in and things can't be any worse than they are under the Glazers. They might bring in the right people in the right positions to make the club better, to improve the mentality. So it's probably looking at 4 or 5 years away, but I think United, if they get a forward momentum again, they're most likely to win the league first because when big clubs get going, they tend to succeed quicker than others. So I think United just about, but I mean, don't ask me to put any money on it or I'll have a bet on it or anything like that.
All right. Well, like I said, both managers in the headlines recently this week, one more so than others in terms of Erik ten Hag at Manchester United. But what's new? That's life when you're Manchester United manager. But let's hear from both managers before this big one tonight.
Of course, there are a lot of rumors about strategic review, but it's not that we get distracted from it. We are on the journey, on the route. We know we are still in transition, but we are in the right direction. And you see it, like how we construct the team, how we develop the team, how the team is progressing, how young players coming in, and you see the potential, how they can contribute to very successful Manchester United for the future.
No, I think it's the time. We cannot change the time. I think it's always good to play in Old Trafford because it's an amazing place, amazing stadium, fans, team, club, and yes, it's a great opportunity always to play there. But I think we are all in similar level with different situations, and I don't say that it's a good moment to go there. The most important is to be ready to compete because we're going to face a team that is going to be tough because for sure they want to win, and as we are a team that we want to keep our momentum to build from Brighton and to be high on the table. And for us, it's important. If we want to be in a different position, it's a game that we need to go there and try to win.
All right, so Chelsea 5 points behind Manchester United in the table, Craig. But do you get the feeling that it's Manchester United that need to win this one more tonight?
Yeah, I think so, just because of the amount of scrutiny that is coming their way, the players' way, the managers' way. And I'm intrigued every time I hear. I think Ten Hag, for a period when he came in, talked a lot of sense. I think that's completely gone now. I think he's talking nonsense and has been since day one of the season, since he went and talked to the press after the Wolves game where they were completely outplayed at home, and was very dismissive of the Anana challenge, that it wasn't a foul. And I think from that day onwards, he's continued the absolute drivel that he's spouted. And I'm absolutely intrigued by this direction that he keeps telling us that they're going, and how it's so becoming so wonderful. Because I don't think outside him and his coaching staff there's anybody else seeing this. Yeah, they have some younger players coming in, Garnacho, Palestri, Minor, who looks a really good youngster. Yeah, I get that, but these have been needy. You know, I mean, he's not doing it out the goodness of his heart to say, "Oh, I'm giving youngsters a game," because he's had to use these players. But I'm absolutely intrigued about this direction. He keeps sitting at press conferences and telling people that they're going, because I for one, I'm just not seeing it.
Augie, what about you? I know Mauricio Pochettino was definitely taking the diplomatic approach in answering whether now is the perfect time to go and get results at Old Trafford, but surely they would be feeling that deep down inside, given just this week alone as well, looking at Manchester United and the last time they were in action in that shambles of a game against Newcastle.
Yeah, and don't forget Mauricio Pochettino was the guy that missed out on the Man United job to Ten Hag. It was down to a final two, and United chose Ten Hag, and I think they made a mistake, to be honest. I think Pochettino's got the personality and the credentials for the job that Ten Hag doesn't really have. I think that squad is a difficult squad, as we've found out. I think Ten Hag's found that out, but I think Pochettino's man management would have been better equipped to deal with that and maybe get more out of the players than Ten Hag has got. But they chose Ten Hag, and I agree with Craig that a lot of the things that Ten Hag says don't really stack up, and I think he's just not very convincing. And I think to manage a club of Man United stature, you need to have some personality, some charisma to do it. And I don't think any of them have had that since Sir Alex Ferguson left. I think you could argue Jose Mourinho, but he wasn't the Jose Mourinho of the Chelsea era. And I think United have had a lot of strange characters to take that role on. And I just don't think Ten Hag has got that ability to lead Man United. And some of the things he says, Craig's right. He doesn't convince me, and I don't think he convinces the players, and that's why we're at the situation we're at. And I think Pochettino's got more of an ability to do that. But you ask who needs the points more tonight. They both do, really. But there's always more scrutiny on Man United because it's Man United. Chelsea are a big club, but they're not Man United, and we've kind of got used to Chelsea in the last 18 months being a bit chaotic. United have promised a bit more after that season under Ten Hag last year. They look like they might be getting back to something, but they've just gone back to where they were 18 months, 2 years ago. So that's why United are in the headlines again, because it's just back to square one all the time. And it's it's like a death spiral, isn't it? They just keep going down and down and then bounce back up and down again. So United need the result big time, yeah.
Augie saying people don't have enough charisma or swag to lead a club. Swag king himself. Just kidding. All right, before we wrap things up, let's get a quick prediction. Craig, how do you see this one? Is this the time that Chelsea finally gets a positive result at Manchester United?
That's about as difficult as who's going to win the league first sort of question, isn't it? I think looking at most of the predictions on the show over the last few days, everybody's gone for a draw. I'm going to stick my neck out. I'm not really. It's not really sticking your neck out. I just think it's been so chaotic at Old Trafford in the last, I don't know how many weeks. The team, the attitude, the questions. I'm going to go for a narrow Chelsea win on the road to pile a little bit more pressure on, because I think there's a little bit more fluency and pace about their team. I'm not convinced by either, I have to say, but I think, when you're at Old Trafford and things are not going well, even before the kickoff of a game, you can feel that tension in the crowd, and I think that'll be there. That'll relate to the players, and I'm going to go for a sneaky Chelsea win. That's where I'm going to sit.
Augie, do you agree?
Yeah, I was on the show last night. I went for a 2-1 Chelsea win. The reason that Greg said, I think that Chelsea got pace, they're quite lively, and I think the Pochettino will know that the first 10 minutes will be crucial. If you can make the Man United crowd grumble and turn on the players will lose all the confidence they've got, and they haven't got a lot. So I think that Chelsea will capitalise in it. Yeah, I fancy Chelsea to win, and I don't see any way that United win this unless the fans decide that they have to throw the weight behind Ten Hag and make it a really raucous atmosphere in the place and they find something. But no, it's Chelsea for me.
All right, so both going for a narrow Chelsea win in this one. Craig, Mark, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Are both of you back on the show tonight?
No, I'm working, Lexis. I'm at a game.
Well, post-reaction. Craig's working as well.
Turn the lights off. I've done this in the past. I've done the show from Old Trafford before. They turn the lights out just as we start to talk. So, no, don't go there again.
At least he's not banned.
Yeah. At least the three of us for the moment are not.
Not this time.
But Augie has been banned by Sir Alex Ferguson. But do you know what, Augie? That I would take as an honor. At least Sir Alex Ferguson knows who you are, right? There you go. All right. Well, thanks as always to Mark Ogden and to Craig Burley. Less than 4 hours away now, that massive match in the Premier League, Manchester United hosting Chelsea. Craig will be back on the show tonight, ESPN FC, where they'll definitely have post-match reaction. You don't want to miss that. But for the moment, that's it for us right now on ESPN FC Live, and we hope to see you again next time.